one, and we're live. We're live with, okay, this is going to sound a little flowery, but one of the coolest filmmakers at Bandance, Pom Bunsermvicha. Did I get that right?
Yes, you did. Thank
Oh,
you.
thank God.
Great.
Okay, amazing. But this is more this is more about your film Lemongrass Girl and getting to know the filmmaker who made this incredible film, this incredible short. First, for audiences that have just watched your film, because we'll be stitching this to the end of the Through Her Eyes showcase, tell us a little bit about the central question that you were exploring in this film.
So Lemongrass Girl follows Piano, the production manager, who is tasked with this lemongrass tradition to plant the lemongrass onto the ground. And this superstition and tradition is actually has been a part of our culture, the Thai culture, for centuries. And it happens more often than you think. Has happened in the past, and now happened, on the outskirts of Thailand, even in the city, whenever there's a big event that's supposed to happen. This tradition is, if you want to prevent rain, you should find a virgin girl to
Mm.
plant lemongrass upside down to upset the gods in the sky, and he will not grant you rain. And so this tradition sort of slowly transition and become a part of filmmaking culture here, because when we are filming, we don't want it to rain. So it's just one of those things that a girl has to do on set. So in this film, Lemongrass Girl, we follow a production manager who is tasked to find someone to do this, and then she fails to find someone to do this, so she has to take on the task herself.
This is so specific, and
Yeah.
because it's specific and it's incredibly universal, right? There are so many people who maybe have not really heard of this myth, this superstition, Thai culture. Never been on a film set, never been a PA, never been tasked with the horrid humiliation of being a COVID PA, which is probably the
Oh,
worst, just walking around with that squirt bottle of, do you have hand sanitizer? Hand sanitizer? Can I take your temperature? This is, interesting. And yet, I think I know a few lemongrass girls.
mm,
I met them on a short film, and I'm going to give a shout out to Emma Pascu. Emma was a PA. Well, not really
mm,
a PA. She was given she was initially, I think, she tapped on for PA, but then she became an assistant to the set designer, and she was washing dishes, and we were remarkable. She was so mature, and then we found out she was 17, and she had made, like, I initially approached her, and I was the DP on the film, and I said to her, I'm like, yeah, and she's like, oh, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I've made like 12 films, and she's like, I've made like 12 films too. So you're thinking like she's 35, 40 years old and just remarkably young looking, and you find out later
mm,
that she's 17 years old and just really ambitious. And she
mm,
was just fighting for that production. It was like her baby, and she was just putting it all into it. um, I think on the sets that I've been on, a big part of it is making sure that nobody is being misused or
mm,
underused. Making sure
mm,
that people, even when their job is, looking out, like a lookout for something, that you make sure that they're learning something. Um,
mm.
but I think that the specificity of this film, because of the personal nature in which you've made it, has made it very universal, so that people, as I alluded to earlier, um, does this come from your own experiences being on film sets? Is my first question.
Good question. It did not like I had never had to be the lemongrass girl, but I've been on film sets where some of my friends would have to do this. And actually, this film came about from a lot of conversations that Anosha Suchakornpong, the writer of the film, she wrote
Mm.
the fictional part of the story. So this film, Lemongrass Girl, is a hybrid. There's the fictional storyline of the Lemongrass Girl, and there's the documentary
Mm.
aspect of it. All of the documentation of Anosha's process of making her feature film come here. So when we first joked about making this film, it was really through conversations,
Mhm.
because we've had a lot of conversations prior to this about the difficulties that people have had to face on set with abuse or bullying or things like that that happens on film sets, especially to women. So in this case, because we've had this sort of running conversation, when Anosha was about to make her film, we said, why don't we, make a film about the Lemongrass Girl, and just ask everybody on the film set, including the lead actress Piano, to play themselves. So this film just came about conversations that we had, and it was put together through just this sort of camaraderie to tell the story together. And it was
Mhm.
made in like a really small crew sort of setting.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of tangenting at this point, but to go
Okay.
back to what you said, it just came out of conversations that we had. And because what was so interesting for me making this film, I know it was a very unique experience. I know that I cannot make a film like this again because it was a film set on the making of another real film.
Yeah.
Was the fact that everybody there was this commonplace experience to the Lemongrass Girl story, that everybody sort of knew what we were doing. Like I
Hmm.
didn't have to go and tell the crew member or the cast, I'm doing this and this is what the story is about. Immediately when they knew that we were gonna tell a story about the Lemongrass Girl, everyone sort of had their own version of of witnessing this tradition in their own way.
Yeah.
So it was really interesting to have everybody perform themselves, perform their role on the film set, and then perform for the film at the same time. That was like something that it didn't occur to me before I made the film that this is the interesting part of the making of this film, but it later on it came to me that I understood that it was really special. Yeah.
No, I love the fact that this is a docu-fiction, the merging of, I think genres are mainly for audiences, really, to better understand the film. It's very rare to find a film that doesn't contain some component of horror or some component of documentary, element to it. But this is very unique backstory, and you're correct in saying that you cannot make a film necessarily the same way again.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really appreciated was how well you did working with non-actors, and it's a completely different language and skill set that you have to employ to do that. So talk a little bit about how you prepared yourself to do that, or maybe what you drew on in your past experience that allowed you to do that so well.
Mm. I honestly don't know what I did. I think maybe because prior to this I had worked on, so I grew up in Thailand, but I studied in the States and I did my bachelor's in the States. So my journey of making films sort of started when I was in university in the US. But when I first came back to Thailand, I made a documentary about this 85-year-old grandma, and it taught me to observe. And so I
Mm,
think it's in the same way as Lemongrass Girl, I felt comfortable working with people in general. I wouldn't say that they are actors or non-actors. At one point, I kind of knew everybody already. I kind of knew who they are. So it's like asking a friend to say, hey, like this is the scenario, this is what's gonna happen. Like let's try it out. Let's try it out. And then we would try it out, and then we would be like, okay, let's try it out again because that didn't work. Can we do
yeah.
this? So it's a lot of just like communicating with people and asking them to try things out. And I think maybe that's a good way to label, the people on film sets. They were also not actors. They were also performing themselves. So
Right.
it's just trying out different things together, while still understanding the context of what I still like to say with the film, with the scene,
Mhm.
with each scene. They knew what we were trying to do, what I was trying to do, or what I was trying to get at. So it's the matter of just trying and playing out different scenarios that
Mm.
we put together.
Thank you for that. I think this film deals with not only the theme of feminism, and women's issues, especially on film sets, which are heavily male dominated. We had several female DPs presenting features at this festival, and they've all echoed the same similar sentiment of there's usually a lot of laughter before there's acceptance.
Mm,
How is she going to lead a grip department, or how's she going to lead, her
mm,
AC, who's a guy who's like 60, and he's been doing it for 40 years, and he's had one way of doing it, which is for a man. And suddenly
mm,
there's this extremely talented female DP. And we had a director, Laura Lemus, with Sweet Disaster from Germany on Thursday, and then in her Q&A on Friday, she said, I asked her, like, what's one piece of advice that you would give to yourself 2-3 years before you made this first feature, because it's so incredible that it's hard to believe this is your first feature. And
mm,
she said something along the lines of, like, don't play small, don't wait. you know
mm,
like it's that she was alluding to the fact that women subconsciously have been conditioned to some degree to play into corners, to
mm,
shrink a little bit, to hold their opinion. So I really sensed in your film that there was that theme, but then there's also the theme of the uh, ridiculous nature of hierarchies in
mm,
film sets. And then I think there's a third theme that particularly appreciated, which is the antiquated nature of certain traditions that perhaps should be left. So how do you
mm.
merge those three things into a short film? Because there is such a thing in films as conceptual overload. Like, you deal with too much and you deal with nothing. So I think you find a way to thread the middle, and so the story. So how do you, if I'm correct in assuming that those three themes are being deeply explored in your film, how do you find the center? It's a very
Mm.
long question. I'm very sorry.
No, it's great. I love your observations of all the themes and that you found in the film. Honestly, I am not. I think echoing the other female director that you had mentioned, Lauren, right? I think it's like I wasn't scared that it would be too conceptual or too much. I just felt like, yeah, the story is saying different, is touching different things and saying many different things at the same time, and that's fine.
Hmm.
Because we had I had the lemongrass girl narrative, which is actually a very, very simple one. I was actually kind of stressed when I was editing. I was like, is this enough tension?
Hmm.
Is this really saying anything beyond just like telling this myth? So I had to play around a lot with making sure that, okay, the lemongrass girl story is there, but I'm still doing something interesting in the film.
Hmm.
The way that I combine that with the documentary part. So for me, I'm not shy, I guess, to deal with a lot of things at the same time. And a lot of the time, to be honest, I'm not conscious. Like I for me, I know what is interesting to me are the things that sort of upsets me or something that is troubling. Like when I hear about the lemongrass girl tradition, I'm like, why, like you said, does this still continue to happen? And I really wanted to understand the tradition itself and what it would be like to reenact it or to see it, and to also understand it from the point of view of the character. I think
Hmm.
prior to making this film, I had had one judgment of it, and it hasn't really changed, but I think I have a deeper understanding of the human side of it, of what it's like to be the lemongrass girl, and to the hierarchy that you mentioned, it
Hmm.
just to life really through the scenes. I think
Right.
that wasn't really intentional. I think it plays a big part on the
Hmm.
film set, but it's already very, very visible. So that actually came about through just documenting. I think a lot of that, the hierarchy that you had mentioned, it just came from the way that we do things. We had
Yeah.
just, if we just turn the camera to look at, this is how we run film sets. We see that already.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that thing that you
yeah.
mentioned about not being conscious, I think that's interesting, because devil's advocate argument that someone who is truly not conscious probably does not articulate that sentiment very often. So being
Mm.
conscious of your subconscious is in effect sort of consciousness, because there's
Okay.
always a subconscious underlayer. So that's the first thing I would say. And I love that we're getting super deep with this film, and I love that we select filmmakers with whom we can have these conversations, because it's not every day that human beings in general can have these conversations. So it's super cool, and I'm so glad that you're doing this. The other part of this, that I have two questions now. Like, we have audience questions too, but I'm like being selfish and I want to ask my questions. I'm
Okay.
sorry, audience members. We will get to your questions. The first question I have is that the fourth part of this dynamic that we did not necessarily explore between the three themes was the concept of being young in
Mm,
society. Because we had a 26-year-old director who made a feature film yesterday, and we were talking about how it's it's difficult to be taken seriously when you're that young, because there's so many, again, subconscious understandings of what people are like when they're under a certain age. And it's very
mm,
difficult to brush everyone with that broad stroke, because there are certain people who are remarkably mature at 13, 14, 15 years old, and they're fully capable of probably directing a feature film at 15 years old. They won't get that shot because the laughter is too loud. The second
mm,
part of this, and the second question that I ask, is how does making a film like this help you empathize with the traditionalists?
mm. Good questions. I would say the first one, I don't have much to say beyond that. Some people still think that I'm in high school and I'm a little boy. When they meet me, and
Yeah,
I said I'm 28 years old. They're like, really? You look like you're still in high school or middle school. And
they're
I
just
like to
jealous.
believe, but
They're
but
jealous. Yeah.
but I do feel a little bit of that. I think even during the filming of Lemongrass Girl, because I had a really small crew, and many times a lot of the what you see on screen is just me alone on the camera and a little mic.
Yep.
And it felt at many times it felt kind of difficult to take up the space, because someone would actually laugh at me, um like the focus puller was making jokes about how I'm doing this thing on the side
Hmm.
while he was working on the main film, and think that what I was doing was a joke. So I while it was very interesting, because during the filming of
You're
Lemongrass
not
Girl,
laughing now, I'm sure.
yeah, I'm sure fuck that dude. um, but he but he laughed at me, and I felt very angry, because I think this was specifically what I was working towards, was to tell a story about what it's like to not be seen, to do
Hmm.
all the invisible work, and to be made fun of was not a good feeling.
Yeah.
Um, and to empathize with the traditionalists, I think I would say that I respect traditions. When I looked into the tradition of the Lemongrass Girl, I found that the history of it was really interesting.
Yeah.
And actually, there's a lot of transformations that happen. The Lemongrass Girl tradition transformed over the years. Back then, people, it could just be anyone who could plant the
Right.
lemongrass. And then at one point, somebody said it should be a virgin, and it should be a girl because she's pure. And if because she's pure, then it could give us the most chance at
Hmm.
warding off the rain. So it's interesting for me to see that traditions change over time
Hmm.
through the context of society.
Yeah.
And I think that's so interesting for me to think about after having made this film, because I don't think of traditions as something that we have to do, but something to think about. It's okay that there are certain traditions that are still there and carry a lot of the culture, and
Hmm.
something very unique that is passed on
Right.
over time from people one many years ago until now. But then when for me, it's like the question is, when did that virgin thing become a part of this? And
Yeah,
then what,
it's yeah.
you know
There's a
what I
there's
mean?
a lot of that, because it's like what happens is somebody, I look at things from the other side, which is saying who benefits, who decides, right?
Mm,
So, if I decide, for instance, that sewing in general is going to be a female tradition, you know, thing that women do that men don't. If I just culturally, push that agenda from childhood to a child, so that young boys who are 4 years old pick up a needle and their father has the authority to say, no, 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 let your sister do that. That's not for you. You condition children young enough, and then later on, you, the same person, authoritarian, number one at the top of the food chain, decides that sewing is going to be a very low paid profession, and that welding, which is in effect the exact same freaking thing, is going to be a high paid profession. Then you are effectively creating the patriarchy and the male superiority, therefore creating the disadvantage and the gap, so that women are always reliant on men. Because I think deep down, see, this is why I say I empathize with traditionalists, because in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which if you're watching all of these Q&As in succession, you're going to hate me because I've mentioned the Maslow's hierarchy of needs like 3 times, like a child who just discovered it. But actually, I didn't just discover it. I discovered it as a child. I rediscovered it as an adult and rethought about it. And I thought about it in the sense of, you cannot judge someone for being ethical or not ethical if you do not ensure first that they feel safe. If someone is not safe, I don't think they're worried about whether or not what they're doing is necessarily ethical for the world, right? So for instance, like if I want to hate every single person who's ever finned a shark, which, it's very easy for me to hate that person, I have to also empathize that they may be living in a place where they've been conditioned to believe that this is the only way they can put food on the table for their family. And how can they consider shark extinction versus their child starving to death? And how can I, as a human being here sitting in Canada with my cushy, government, everything, judge the person in China who's doing that? Like, I can't, right? So that's where I say, like, and tradition provides stability and sureness and safety for a lot of people. And I didn't find this out until I was pretty rebellious through my teens, and I sort of railed against the illogical nature of religion. Like, why does this make sense? Like a lot of teenagers do, right? And what I found was that 20 years old, I was praying because my mother had just passed away. And the only comforting thought that I had in that moment is, oh, my mother and father are now together in heaven. The same thing I was telling everyone didn't exist and was completely stupid 3 years ago now gave me sureness when I lost sureness. So I think that for a lot of people who lean into tradition of, oh, women don't do this, men don't do this, I think what they're doing is saying my world still makes sense.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Yeah. We have some audience questions here. One is, I don't know if you're gonna like this one, but okay. Okay. I think we sort of answered this one. Are there a lot of traditions like this that still persist?
Hi, Bohana. I think there are different. Yes, I would say that there are different traditions that still persist in Thailand, if that's what you mean by your question. I think Thailand is a really a country full of traditions and culture. I think there are certain traditions that are now sort of lost because the younger generation or people who now have the internet and all kinds of things, they don't really care so much to do the same things. And there are like certain things that I find very nostalgic. Something that we have done before and now we don't really do anymore, something that helps me connect to a certain past, a past that I might want to still relive or connect with or still want that to stay alive. So I think it really depends.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way of looking at it. And you know what? Like outside of Thailand, there are a lot of traditions like this that still exist. Film set hierarchies, etc. And I think if you're a filmmaker and you work across the world, if you go to India, China, Philippines, Australia, you're going to find different set ethics, different rules, different types of absurdities, but you just have to lean into it and understand where it's coming from. That is done. This is just a comment. Faith, thumb at Pendants. Thank you,
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. I better not hear you say this about another film, Michael. But thank you for that. That's really sweet. And you know what? I sense that this might really connect with somebody when we were doing the programming for the shorts. There's always that opportunity of, could this film spark something in someone that could make them think for 2-3 days. And I think that this film did. So I'm really glad it connected here. Um, Here is Carmen. What advice would you give aspiring female filmmakers? So this is a staple question in I think almost every Q&A that every woman does everywhere, I think. But is
It's
there?
okay. It's okay. I don't really have advice, but to just do a thing, just go make films. I don't have advice. Don't be, go out there and take up space and make your films. Do what you love. That's all. That's my advice.
I love that. Take up space. It's so funny. The thing that we talked about. It's almost like bookending this Q&A with the thing we talked about subconscious, conscious. And sort of if you believe subconsciously that you need to take up 2 inches of space, then every time you're given an opportunity to take up 3 inches of space, something will always stop you. So I really love that. Just go do it and take up space. Because it's almost the opposite of everything most people are taught, which is be humble, keep your head down, keep your eyes low, stay in your lane, wait your turn. It's like, why? Why
Yeah.
wait? And I think that's going to be a theme today because we're meeting with Carlota Pereira, who made Piggy 2022 Sundance, that feature. And she's just like, fuck it, I'm not waiting for anything. Let's go. And Ethan Engie, like, I think I love that we're starting out today talking to you because I think it sets the tone for everything we're going to be talking about today. So I'm so thankful that you joined us from Thailand. I'm so glad that we were able to do this. I'm sorry you didn't get to meet your other Through Her Eyes filmmakers,
No
but
worries.
obviously waking up at 5 a.m. Would it have been 5
That
a.m.
would
for you?
be a bit hard, yes. I have another advice actually. I would say lean into your community and friends. I think that helps a lot. Lean
That's
into
beautiful.
lean into your friends and help each other. I think that is more powerful than you think. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for helping Pandance audiences understand Pandance films. Um, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being part of Pandance and keep in touch. Yeah, let us know if there's anything we can do for Lemongrass Girl and good luck. And where's the film going next? Do you know?
There's a couple of places. I don't know them on top of my head. But yeah, it's still traveling.
Yeah.
I think we just got acceptance from another place in Germany, and so it's going around. So I'm so happy that I can share the film with so many people across the world. Like there's COVID, I cannot be there, but the film can reach you, and I think that's I'm so thankful that people watch it, connect with it, and it sparks something, like you said, Robert.
Well, thank you for making it. And yeah, as I said, stay in touch. Good night.
Bye bye.